Easy, busy, busy, easy, busy, busy, easy, busy, busy. Hello everyone, and welcome to Doing Art episode 18. My name is Lorens Chuno, and this episode is with actor, writer, producer Alex Spieth. I decided to have Alex on the podcast after watching a few episodes of her show Blank My Life, a fantastic, well-produced web series that centers on her life experience. As you will learn, Alex is very prolific, a self-driven content provider, which is exactly what today's film industry needs. After listening to this podcast, you can learn more about Alex by going to doingart.net, the website of the podcast, where I have links to all her works. All right, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I present Alex Spieth. So maybe we should just start from the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Let's talk about where you're from.
Okay.
So that we can find out how you ended up in this crazy world of doing all the things you do.
Well, so I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, but very, very quickly, as long as I have memories of my life growing up, I lived in Nashville, Tennessee, and I lived there for 18 years, and then I went to college in Pittsburgh. But I grew up, like the bulk of my memory of growing up is in Nashville.
Oh, Nashville, Tennessee. That's the country music capital of the world.
It is indeed the country music capital of the world. Tragically enough, I left bare of playing any sort of musical instrument or singing. But I will say the thing that strikes me the most in sort of thinking about it in the past was, you go into any bar and there's live music. And of course there are obviously places with live music even here in New York, but it's not the way it is in Nashville. Like everywhere you go into, there's somebody who plays. It's like dime a dozen, like get off,
Wow. So like in New York, there's so much live music. There's so many people, many bands playing that the musicians, like me, I'm a musician, but I'm very careful of booking gigs because I want to be able to bring people out. So when you, like in Nashville, whenever you see people play, is there usually a sizable amount of people in the crowd? I feel like I can't speak to this super accurately as of very recently because the final part of my story is that my family moved to Seattle my last year at college. So I haven't been back to Nashville in probably 3 years. And before then I wasn't super, when you're growing up, you're not as into like concerts as the way one might be in one's, young 20s, I suppose. But I always remembered thinking that there were good amounts of people and that the talent was really good. Most of the talents coming from outside Nashville.
I don't know. That's
there to do music.
That's hard for me to tell. I mean, certainly there's a lot of homegrown talent, but if you do want to be a country music star, it's definitely a good place to be. I think it's sort of the same way, actors will go to New York or LA because it's like if you want to make it big, you got to stand where you might have lightning strikes. So got to go to a big open field. And by that, it might mean Nashville.
Yeah. Do you remember why your family moved to Nashville?
It was my dad's job. Everywhere that my family has moved has been because my dad has changed jobs. Pretty much like they're going to Seattle, and that was because of his job. And I assume if we move again, it will be because of his job.
Because I was going to say, what does he do?
So my father is a logistician, and right now he is the CFO for Zulily, which is a children's clothing company. Yeah.
I know about
it's super cool.
Awesome.
And he is great at his job. But when he moved to Nashville, it was to join, oh gosh, you know what? I actually don't know which job he came to Nashville for, but the bulk of my life, he worked with a place called OHL, which is Osborne Hesse Logistics.
Oh, okay.
So it was a lot of transportation.
Because I was going to say Nashville to Seattle. It's like a big shift in terms of ideologies and everything. I'm like, okay, maybe they're just tired of Nashville. They're like, okay, we're going to move to somewhere more liberal.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like my family likes Seattle a lot more than they like Nashville. But there were a huge amount of there's also just been a huge amount of change. You know, when they lived in Nashville, my sister and I were pretty much still in school. You know, like now that they've been in Seattle, both of us are out of the house, so they're a little more relaxed in that way. B, just like the climate and everything is more relaxed. It's not as humid, you know. It's more dreary, but I think they would rather have that than the humidity any day. And my mother actually growing up was a minister. And once she moved to Seattle, she kind of went into retirement. So I think that, even though she loved it, it's a relief to not have to guard a flock.
Yeah. Of people who are looking up to you. And
exactly.
You have to watch your every move.
Exactly. I just think it's a lot of responsibility. Like no one gets flack the way a minister gets flack because you have to be every sort of likable, but a lot of things that make people likable, aka relatability, are sort of like out the window because it's not like you really can go, and particularly in the South, it's not like you want to go get a beer with your pastor, and certainly not with your female pastor. I think it might be a little different with males, and I think also, you know, in certain denominations it's different, but I don't know, I remember feeling like mom seemed a lot more relaxed once she kind of retired.
That's like, it's so interesting. Nobody would ever think of this the way you just analyzed it, that you have to walk that fine line between relating to people and still being the good person that everybody looks up to.
Yeah, and it's very hard because, I mean, relatability, I feel like, is sort of exposing one's own flaws, and that's what people find common ground in. But at the same point, it's like, but you're also supposed to be in contact with divinity. So I don't know. I mean, certainly I've never considered being a minister, but I feel like in my mom's sort of one of her last churches in Nashville, there was another pastor there, and he had a son who's gone into ministry, and it wasn't ever something that occurred to me, but I thought it was a good choice for him because I feel like he seems so instantly relatable to me. Oh, wow. And I think men have an easier time with it, honestly. I think it's harder for women, but I was like, I
believe so, totally.
Yeah.
And I have experiences, I have examples.
Yeah.
Because like, I don't mean to cut you short. Like I teach in a college. And most of my male students, like sometimes I say a joke and everybody, they would laugh. But I say that the male students, they feel more comfortable just making fun of me, like throwing a joke at me. And so why the female students, they're like more reserved. And maybe sometimes the male students, they feel more comfortable coming to me and talking to me and then stretching out their hands to shake my hands, you know. So sometimes I make it a point of duty to ask to like try to relate more with the female students. And sometimes maybe even, I know sometimes some people frown at a man stretching out their hands to shake a woman, but I try to do it, and I see that it changes. But I totally agree with you.
No, but I think it's man, I think it's super hard. Because I mean, like, honestly, with like any sort of male-female relationships, and this is you know what I mean, like, this is years and years, this isn't reinventing anything, but it's like there's just more fear about sort of like crossing into like inappropriate territory, and then you sort of can't get back, or like people think there's something inappropriate even if it's totally not. And I feel like thusly it leads to like a lot of like very above board behavior, but that sometimes means you're cutting out like humor and relatability, which is something that sort of like inherently is a little bit of line crossing, even though obviously I'm not talking about like we must go out and do inappropriate things, but like you know what I mean. I just think it's like it makes sense to me that your male students have an easier time talking to you.
It's like you just said that, I'm like, wow, and I'm now trying to imagine what your mother must be going through. So I'm happy for her. She's in Seattle.
Yeah, I think she definitely like, you know, loved the church. I don't think she regrets any of her time spent there, but I think, I mean, in a way, it's also just a quality of retirement. Is like your life is in theory like more relaxed because you aren't going to work all the time. But you know, I mean, and she definitely like, so since she's been out of the ministry, she's written 2 books because she went to West Point and she was the it's super cool. She was
Mom is mad cool.
Yeah, I know. My mom is like very, very cool. Like she went to West Point, she was a minister, she wrote 2 books. But it's going to be a 4-part series about a girl going to West Point. So it's sort of it's historical fiction, but it's based a lot off of her life.
Don't worry about it. Yeah. Oh, wow. Let's talk about Carnegie Mellon, because that's where you went, right? Yeah. So,
and I noticed you've had many of my...
Yes, I have 4 of them. You're the 4th person.
Because it's Trevor, Bryce, and Ben, right?
Ben, And then because you guys are doing great things, so...
I mean, you know, it's because we're doing great things. So I went to Carnegie Mellon. Actually, it was a bit of a surprise because... you know, I super wanted to go to Northwestern and I applied to early decision, and it was because I was specifically like, you know, I want to be on a BA track. I don't necessarily want to go for just acting, but I think a lot of that had to do with, I mean, Northwestern is an amazing school. And like the reason that I didn't end up going is that I didn't get in early decision, which is, you know, you can't reapply after that. So it was like, okay, you can't do that, Alex. So then I was kind of like, well, you know, like whatever. I don't want to be a scholar anyway, you know? And so I was like, and I applied to a bunch more schools, but after that, I was pretty sure that I wanted to go to a BFA track, or I think it was more just the fact that I didn't get in. I was like, well, I guess it's the thing of like, well, I've already lost out and I've already missed this sort of opportunity. So I'm actually going to go full steam ahead on another direction. And so I had visited Carnegie Mellon and I was kind of like, man, like I hate it that they don't let non-actors act. I hate it that it's a conservatory. That I didn't when I visited, I didn't find that appealing because I was like, you know, acting should be for all people. You know what I mean? And then of course I got in and I was like, well, whatever about my principles. You know what I mean? Like I want to go to one of the best schools in the world. And I had such a great time. I really can't say enough good things about Carnegie Mellon. I think like, you know, I think everyone will have thoughts about their educational experience and sort of things that they might do differently going through again. But I cannot state enough that like I loved it so much, and I felt like my teachers were so devoted to me, Alex, Spieth, and to like pretty much every other member of our class. That's I felt awesome. Very, very supported there. And I think the thing that's just hard, and I think it makes people sort of have like sometimes like a negative look back at their education, is that, you know, being an actor is freaking hard. It is. You know, like it is. I say it as like I act consistently, but I don't act consistently for money. Like, because I do get jobs, you know, where I'm like, oh yeah, I get like, this is like the job that's paid me for a while. Yeah. But certainly I act consistently, but not consistently for money. And I think that can, and you know, and I still feel really lucky. You know, you want to continue going more and more into where like, okay, now I like, you know, to the point where I'm like, I only sort of work for money, or else I don't deign to do those projects. You know what I mean? Yeah, I understand. But I think, but I still feel very lucky in getting to work as much as I do, because I think for me, I mean, like, a huge thing that's hard is like you go from a conservatory program where you are acting, even if you don't try to, even if you try to do the least amount of work possible, you're probably acting like 10 hours a week.
Wow.
Maybe, well, I mean, and that's on like a low end. I think if you're doing as much as you can act, 20, 25, 30 hours a week, and what I'm saying is probably conservative. I would say if you really tried to escape acting, you would still have to do it 20 hours a week. But it feels
that's
like,
a lot.
yeah, I mean,
that's good too.
It's great. And I think it's a huge part of why conservatories are so helpful is you just get in the rhythm of doing it all the time. But I think it can be hard after college when you all of a sudden, it's not in the rhythm of doing it as much. So you can feel more gun shy or you can feel more, I don't know.
And then you have to get the job in order to do it.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta get the job
in order to do it. Now, speaking about getting the job, one of the things that attracts me to the people I bring to my podcast is people who are enterprising, people who create their own jobs. Because being an actor, amongst all the arts, acting is the one that you just have to rely on other people to give you a job. You always have to keep begging people, oh, please put me in a project and stuff like that. But some people, they create their own stuff. And you've created this amazing web series. Yeah. Blank My Life. Yeah. And I'm going to tell you, I've not watched everything, but I'm like, where have I been? I love this.
Thank you. That's very nice.
4 episodes. I really like it. And I'm not just saying it. Yeah, I really like it. It's incredible.
Thank you.
Yeah. Did you conceive that when you were at CMU or?
No.
Okay. So let's talk about it.
No. I mean, I feel like this is the story I tell the most frequently to people. But so I've never thought of myself as being particularly creative outside of acting. Like I'm not somebody who has in my mind like a lot of ideas. Like when we go into a rehearsal room, I'm sort of like, okay, like I hope the director will tell me what to do. Yeah, like I've never been someone, and I do know people who like were in a rehearsal room and they're like, oh, but what if we do this and this and this and this? And I've
just put a pin on it. Do you think directors like that when you bring ideas? They don't. Do they?
No. Okay. I think it really is like a smart actor and a smart director, I think, are able to sort of look at the climate of the room. Because I think that there are directors who really value input. But I don't think all directors are like that. And I don't think all directors value input all the time. Okay. But I think, I think in an ideal world, art is collaborative. And I think sometimes there are things that like an actor can just feel and they're like, oh, well, why don't we try it this way? I think it's just sort of about like, honestly, I think it's about sensing climate. Because I think that, and also I've worked with like the same director a couple of times and there will be times that she'll be more, it can depend on cast size. Like if there's everybody trying to put in opinions, then you kind of have to be like, okay, everybody, like we just got to do this right now. But if you're working with like 3 or 4 people, it's easier to be like, okay, well, what do you think, John? Okay, let's try that. I think, I don't know. I definitely would say I defer to the side of being like, let's see how it goes. And if something feels really wonky discussing it. But I think there have been times where I have wished that I spoke up a little more or like, quite frankly, just had more ideas. But I think I've become more like that in, in working more and working in more collaborative ways and also working on the web series.
Yes. So let's keep talking about the web series. You were saying that you're not that.
Yeah, well, I'm not, so yeah, I don't think of myself as like that way, but so my first year out of college, I got dropped by my agency after in like the summer, and at the time, now I feel like pretty as at peace with it as one sort of can, but I felt a huge amount of regret and anger, and it was the first time that I had felt like I failed, and all like in a real way, you know, like I didn't get into Northwestern, but as far as it felt to me like the first time that I considered like, you know, I'm not cut out for acting. Like I shouldn't be an actor. Like I don't know what I'm thinking. Like I can't, you know, I'm not able to. I also never got a call back through my agency. So it makes, you know, like I think they were pragmatic. Like I have no anger. It's just business, right?
Wow,
and
so they just dropped you without letting you know?
Oh no, they let me know. But I think what I'm trying to say is like I think they were like in their eyes, like they were in the right. You know, I had a year, and I, you know, like you can't blame yourself too much. But I felt like it was my fault, and I was not booking work.
I see.
I was,
which is not your fault.
It's
sometimes you go for an audition and everybody's bringing something. So sometimes they just pick whoever.
Yeah, and I definitely. The thing is, like, you know, because you either have the option of like, okay, like it's right, like they are right, and I shouldn't be an actor, or you have to be like. They are not right, and like something didn't happen, but it doesn't mean that I'm not meant to be an actor. But so essentially I just felt very depressed and upset and was really like, and so I was just like, oh, you know, like God, I need to start making something, like start to make anything, just to sort of like. And it wasn't even because I had a game plan. I just was like, I feel so bad about myself that I have to do something. And so me and Ben and Trevor, who have also been on this podcast, we just started getting together on Saturdays and writing like I wrote them always, but like really, really like little tiny sketches, right? And the first ones you'll see, like if you go and look on my website, we label them as the pre-season because they're like,
I saw that.
Yeah, they're like, so for about a year, we did sort of 9 quote episodes, but they feel to me very much like sketches, you know, and some of them are very poor quality initially. Like the first one we shot, I was supposed to be on a date. And we you know, it was the first thing we ever filmed. So we were like, okay, well, let's just do it in the apartment. And like watching it back, it just so clearly looks like it's not a restaurant. And like, we were like, oh, of course. Like we were like, you know, like the apartment will definitely start to look like a restaurant if we like put some like string lights up and stuff. But it doesn't look like, it looks like a pun. Yeah, it looks like ridiculous. Cause like, and it's also not like we're acknowledging, like, it doesn't feel funny enough to where you would feel like, oh, that was a choice. It feels like a huge mistake. So eventually we decided to never put that episode out because it was just like too embarrassing. But the thing is now the season finale of the first real season. We reshot that episode that we didn't make initially in an actual restaurant. I think it looks really good. But so we did that we made like the 9 preseason episodes for a year. And by the last 2 episodes, pretty much, I sort of felt like we had a team that could have traction. We got another guy named David Spadora, who was very good at filming and at editing. And it sort of felt like all of a sudden it was something that could be taken to the next level.
Awesome.
So that summer of 2015, I wrote the first season. And, you know, I wrote probably a little too much. I wrote maybe 17 or 18 episodes, and we pared it down to what was initially 12, and then we eventually 11. Nice. And we shot it the first proper season. We shot it from, I think we started shooting October 4th, and the last one was wrapped in probably middle of January or early February. So it was a very condensed process. And it felt, the thing I can't impart enough is how incredible my friends are. You know, one of my friends flew out from LA with his Red, which is like a really, really nice camera. We shot most of them on my Canon 7DD, which is also a very nice camera, but, you know, Reds shoot Louis and stuff. And he came out and filmed 4 episodes, and on his dime, you know, because I didn't really like pay anyone anything other than sort of like thank you tokens.
Oh my god,
and
that's incredible.
But I think it is like the thing I took away from it is like people who are gonna do a professional job, if they agree to it, are gonna do a professional job, whether you're paying them $100 or whether you're paying them 25 cents.
Definitely.
And that's also very low balling. But you know what I mean? Like Ben Viertel, who also was on this, you know, he's not going to do a lesser job on something because you're not paying him a lot of money.
I see.
He will either say like, oh, I don't have enough time for this, and he will not do the job, which is also fine because you're like, okay, well then I have to find something else. Or he'll give it his all no matter what if he decides to do it. And I found that to be the case with all of my friends. I don't know that that's the case with everyone, but with my friends, I felt very blessed because, you know, I write it and I'm in it, but I don't like to direct it because it's like, it's just too much me. It's like too much Alex. It's like somebody make a decision here, you know, and that's like what the director's for. And also like a big thing that I felt like I learned is, you know, like I am pretty like up my butt about like, you know, things need to be scheduled, like people need to know what's going on, like, and I feel like I'm sometimes that way to a fault of like, Alex, just like relax and like it'll be fine, like,
but that's why you get stuff done though.
Yeah, I agree, but I do think there are times where it's like, Alex is so freaking annoying, like can she like shut up so
but
we
there
can
has to be one person that does that,
and I do think like I do think the thing I see, the benefit of paying someone is like, so we are going to do a next season. We're going to film it this next year. Yeah. But I say it in a tongue-in-cheek way, but I'm like, any money we have, we are going to get a freaking production manager so that they can be like, you know, like we're starting in 5 minutes, you know, because the thing is like right now I had been taking that job on and or the director had been taking that job on, but both so like the writer / like star, but you know, and the director, it puts them in a position they don't want to be in because you also, by being a production manager, you have to be a bit like, okay, everybody, like we have to be on task, we have to, and it just, you know, it's inevitably the job that gets a lot of flack. Yes. And like gets, you know, and you can feel like, oh, why is this person being annoying? Which is why good production managers and good stage managers are like, is worth all the money in the world, you know, but I understood all of a sudden why it's such an important position because when you're in a play, you understand the value of a stage manager, but I didn't understand the value of it half as much as when I was in charge of something. I was like, God, it would be so nice to have someone to handle this. And when
you were starting out, when you're like doing an independent stuff and that's your first stuff and you don't have a lot of money, you're always trying your best to cut costs. And sometimes you see that what you're trying to cut costs is actually affecting the quality of what you're doing, but sometimes it's difficult to see, like you guys using your apartment for a restaurant. It's like unconsciously trying to cut costs. And at the end, it just came out like
completely and it was terrible. And the thing is also like, you know, before I started doing the preseason and before I started doing the first season, I had sort of like a period where I talked to people who had done web series before. It was like, you know, what are smart things to do? What are smart? And the thing I would impart to anyone doing a web series is you do not have to pay for spaces. Like there are restaurants that will charge you $200 to use it, but there are also restaurants who will charge you nothing. You just need to look for those locations. And I think it might be different in LA. I've heard LA is a little bit harder to get places, but I've never lived in LA, so I do not know. But my experience is that New York is very chill because quite frankly, they have bigger fish to fry than kids running around with cameras, you know? And I felt like I was really hot and bothered because we shot one episode in a park, right? So I went through, you know, all the proper clearances to, you know, make sure that like, if we were stopped by a park official, there'd be no issue. And like nobody said anything to us all day. Like no one said a word. No one questioned us. We were like there probably for like 8 hours and no one said anything.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. And I thought
That's
it was
good to know.
Yeah. I mean, I would still encourage, like I felt, to me, it's all about, safe. It's all about peace of mind. And also, you know, it costs nothing to talk to a park official.
But how long does it take to get the permit?
The permit?
Yeah.
So I didn't have an official permit, as I recall. Yeah. I had permission from the Parks Department itself for Riverside Park.
Yeah. Okay.
Whereas if you're shooting in different spaces, sometimes you need a permit. But my experience actually was like the people in the Parks Department were very responsive, very chill, and just sort of want to make sure you aren't planning on setting up some sort of like barbecue station and leaving all your food there to destroy the wildlife. Like I felt their biggest concern was like, but who will take care of the trash? Who will make sure that it's clean afterwards? Yeah. And I was like, I don't think there's going to be that much trash. I was like, we're not setting up a buffet lunch because we have not that much money to do that. But you know, that's their concern. It's like they don't want people to make it look bad.
Yeah. Question. Can you give us like a synopsis of
Blank My Life?
Yeah, Blank My Life. Yeah, I was gonna ask another question, but
no. Do you want to say no? Please ask the other question.
No. Let's get this one first, then I'll ask it next.
So,
and you'll recognize the question.
Oh my gosh! Well, so what I always write in emails is Blank My Life is a surreal comedic web series that follows Susan, a New York City millennial, on her quest to find love and simultaneously not end her life.
Awesome.
Yeah,
that's I read that, and that's that explains it.
Yeah.
Now the big question is this.
Yeah.
Do you think that art should be funded by the government? That's your question.
Oh my gosh. Do I think that art should be funded by the government?
You recognize the question?
Of course I recognize that question. That question is a punchline from the first episode. Yeah. And do I think that? You know? Mm-hmm. So Ben Viertel, one of the directors on the series and one of my dear best friends, is is like part German and visits Germany a lot, and he always speaks about how like Germany is so different because the arts are subsidized and because it's just such a great place for artists to work. I think the obvious benefit to that is that it's a livable lifestyle, but you are also sort of compromising the level of fame that you could get in places where it's not subsidized by the government. I think I don't know if this is correct or not, but I view it as sort of like akin to tipping systems, right? Like if it's like, oh, all employees in a restaurant are getting paid $15 an hour. Like some people totally want that, but other people are like, oh no, I'd way rather make less than that and roll the dice that on big nights I'm going to make a lot more money than that.
I see.
That's
the point.
Yeah, but I would say Alex Spieth at this moment in time would like it if the arts were supported by the government.
That's what I'm questioning, because like the sciences are funded by the government. Like if you're good, you get funding to do research. Yeah. So why can't we do that for the arts? And I feel like if that is done, I still think there'll still be fame. They'll like people could still, the people who are good, the good people will still rise above the others and be noticed and become famous. And then it turns out, from my experience, I noticed that most of the people who do good arts are not even trying to be famous. Yeah. Most of the times. And then maybe fame finds them. Yeah. So I don't know. That's my take.
No, I don't know. I do feel really conflicted about fame in general, because I agree with you. I think it's really hard to make something that's good if you're thinking about like, I want it to make anything. I think it's hard to act well when you're thinking about like the end game is that I want to act well. It's hard to make good things when you're like, the end game is to make something good. I think it's easier to be like, okay, I'm just going to try and do this the best that I can. And then, so BJ Novak, who is one of the writers on The Office and stuff, I was just reading some interview with him, and he was like, I never try and make something that's going to, this is bastardized quoting, but he was like, I'm never trying to make something that goes viral, or what I try to do is make something that's as good as possible and then make sure it gets seen by as many people as it can. And I was like, I think that's a really smart way of putting it, is like, try to make yourself, try to make your art, try to make whatever as good as it can be at this moment, right? Like, you sort of can't get better than where you are at the moment. Like, you can get better in like 10, like I hope that what I'm making in 10 years is better than what I'm making right now. Like, Jesus, I hope so. But like, I'm not 10 years down the line already. So, you know, just making it as good as I can make it right now as 25-year-old Alex Spieth, like, who hasn't had a child, who hasn't gotten married, you know, like, that will, I'm sure, shape my life.
Yes.
Making it as good as I can, and then trying to get it seen by anyone who would possibly want to see it.
Definitely.
You know, because I think that's the thing. Because I'm aware, like, you know, now I've gone to like a few of these like screenings, right? And I am so proud of my web series.
That's
and
dope,
I think,
though. That's really
oh,
good.
yeah.
To be able to get into a screening for your web series.
Yeah,
I just want to remark that.
It's, I mean, it's awesome and it's so great. But, and this is, I do not in any way mean to put down my web series, but you notice, like, you're like, okay, I can see how certain short films, right, are of like just a higher cinematic quality than, you know, because web work doesn't require the same amount of cinematic finesse because you're not expecting people to watch it on a big screen. It doesn't mean that, like, and also, like, you know, it's just not the same caliber of cinematography as expected from it. But I am, like, in seeing that, I'm like, okay, like, I can see differences watching it on a bigger screen, but I wouldn't ever notice those on the web. That's you know? No, it's great. And it's a true credit to the people who filmed it and how awesome they are.
That's good. Nice. You also do comedy. Are you also a stand-up comedian?
No, I'm not a stand-up comedian.
But your stuff is very comedic.
I would say that, I mean, I'd say that I am a comedian in the way that...
You are a comedian. In the way like that... it's very... You do comedy well.
I guess I would say... I categorize myself as more like actor-writer, but at the same point, you know, I'm on an improv team, and cool. You know, I think the way that I would aspire to be like comedians, even though I'm not sure that I ever want to do like stand up or anything like that, because like, my God, hats off to the people who do that, because it is so hard and so stressful, and it is just you. Like, there is nobody else there.
But the good thing about it, you don't need any other thing but just the microphone.
No, and that's super true. Like, at the same point, you're like, that's like the benefit. Like, you can work on it literally any time of day, any time of night. But and you're on no man's schedule but your own schedule. But still, I don't know. I feel like so many comedy shows I go to, I'm like, God, like, you go to certain shows and you're like, I sort of know how I think I would give advice to make this better. And a lot of times, you know, you watch, like, to me, I watch stand-up comedy shows. And I'm like, God, I don't know what I would say. You know, like, I don't know what remedy I would offer to like make this. And it's because I'm not as versed in the art form. I'm sure there are people who give very good advice, but to me, I'm like, whoa, it's hard. That's hard.
I'm not a stand-up comedian. So sometimes I want, because sometimes I've come up with certain things that I think is funny. But then I say those things and I look at the time and it's just 30 seconds has passed, or maybe 20 seconds. Then I start wondering how much writing I would have to do in order to be on stage for 30 minutes. You know? So like, how they must do a lot of writing, maybe a month worth of material can only get you maybe 10 minutes or 15 minutes. So like, I wonder how the art form must be very difficult. Now, question, we started by talking about how sometimes certain things in the society is more difficult for women. Do you think acting, the field of like the field you're in now, producing, doing all these things and making your own art form, and acting in general, you know, is it more difficult for women for what you see? Because it's been said, I mean, like the big dogs in Hollywood, a lot of the women have talked about how much how difficult it is for women more than men. Do you have anything to say about that? You don't have to agree. You can just
no. I think it is far harder for women than men, and I think a huge part of that, and a huge part of that is, quite frankly, you feel like you're on a time limit in a way that I feel like men don't feel that way. Like I date an actor, and we talk about it, and he's like, oh no, I never worry about like getting too old. And I'm like, I feel very keenly aware that it is so much harder to work after 40. I mean, every year, it's an advantage if you can get it when you're younger, but it's like every year for women, it gets harder and harder because roles evaporate. And because you don't sort of have this like a huge part of what gets women work is like the quality of being sexy. They are often very good actors along with being sexy. I think there are very few people on TV who I would be like, oh, they're not good. Like I actually would say most people on TV are pretty worth their salt, and I think most people in movies are pretty worth their salt. They might not be to your taste, but I think they're pretty good. Yes. And I think it's so much harder because like in theory, like I feel like male lifespan just doesn't feel the same way. Like I feel like it's not as stressful for my male friends. I mean, I think times are changing. I think that the world is opening up, and I do see sometimes in some of my male friends who it sort of feels like the world was promised to them, and it's not, the world isn't delivering on their promise, and I feel like I see some resentment in young men my age. But at the same point, I'm kind of like, well, like tough luck. You know what I mean? Like I think it's like, well, I mean, that being said, I still feel very privileged because, I am a white woman who is like very well educated and of an upper middle class family. So like I have, a lot of advantage. But I do think like it breaks my heart that I think it's, it's just, it is, I think it is harder for women. And I think even at sort of a small level of like, it's easier for guys to get into school because they're just less men in the beginning that want to do it. And I think it's, I don't know. I feel like there is something about male energy and particularly like when there are groups of men doing things, it seems really like pure. And I feel like people are really attracted to it in a way that when there's sort of groups of women doing things, there's sort of the stereotype of like, oh, they must be lesbians. Or it definitely is like, it feels kind of like, it feels complex.
It must be lesbians.
Well, I mean, I'm speaking in a tongue-in-cheek way, and I'm speaking like it's. I also think that there should be something really pure about women doing work together, but I feel like, by and large, I don't see people looking at an all-female work and being like, wow, how it feels already complex to me, rather than I feel like when you see like all-man groups, you're like, whoa, how cool that all these boys are like hanging out together. They happen to be good at this thing, like, whereas it's not the same way when you look at groups of women doing work. And I don't think it's a shame because I think that, then again, like, the Ghostbusters that I haven't seen it yet, but like, like, I feel like that should be the exact something where you're like, wow, all these cool ladies like doing something together.
I'm sure people are already talking trash about it.
I don't know. I mean, I definitely haven't seen it. And
but one show, sorry to cut you short.
No.
One, I think Melissa McCarthy, Bridesmaid got a lot of good reviews, surprisingly. Like I was surprised at how a lot of men reviewed it as really a top-notch comedy. Maybe because the women out did whatever they were. They went really crazy and stuff like that. Another question I wanted to ask is this: what do you think of failure? Like, you seem to be somebody who embraced
failure.
To me, I failed a lot. Trust me, I failed a whole lot. In school, like I'm with an academic, you know.
Yeah,
I
of
have
course.
a PhD, and I've been through exams where I just failed. I've taken an exam where I was maybe among the 2 people who failed it,
Yeah.
and then took it again and passed. And I've done an album that nobody bought, you know,
Yeah,
nobody
yeah,
cared
yeah.
about. So there was. What do you think? What advice would you give somebody? Would you give yourself? Like when you were, maybe give your 12-year-old self or your 15-year-old self and say, knowing what, I know you're still really young, but knowing what you know so far, what you've been through, should we cry too much about failure, or should we embrace it and, you know, and know that it's part of the process?
You know, I always think about this when I've, you know, because like I want to be famous, you know, like, and every day I'm sort of like, oh man, can't believe I'm not famous yet. Yeah. You know, but I think about like not getting into Northwestern sometimes. And like, I feel like if I had gone there, it would have been awesome. And I would have had a great time, right? Like phenomenal school.
Yeah.
But I do feel like because I didn't get in, like, and, you know, sort of like going to Carnegie, it's put me on a different track than I may have been in. Yeah. And I think it was like a huge blessing overall for me. Yeah. For me. I think there are, you know, different examples for everyone. Yeah. And I feel like when I first, and like, so recently, or like more recently, like when I got dropped by my agency, I felt a lot of shame about it. And I felt even more so that people in acting didn't know how to react to that news. And I was like, but it's not uncommon. It's like not uncommon at all. And I feel like I felt like no one sort of had the words to deal with it in a really good way, other than one former professor of mine. But everyone else, it felt a little weird about it, or was like awkward about it, or was very like, don't know what to say about it. And I feel like the biggest thing I can impart is like, I feel like the things that were my failures have become my armor. You know, like the thing, like I feel like now I'm kind of like, I was dropped by my agency, and I would tell anybody that, and I would not be ashamed about it. And I would hope that people would realize that, like, because it's happened to me, I would want it to give faith to other people who are also talented, and like, you know, shit just happens. I guess. And like, like on some level, I do believe it was like my fault. But at the same point, even if it was my fault, it was my fault, and I made it. And I don't think, I know it's hard. Like, I do think a huge part of failure is the grieving process, because like I'm like pretty like chill with it now, but like, you know, up to the first year out, it was just such a point of shame and humiliation for me. And I don't think you necessarily need to like feel that bad about it, but I think a huge thing that's made me who I am is the fact that I like really felt a loss, really felt very sad about it, felt like I probably wasn't supposed to be an actor, and came out on the other side of that. You know, some people are of the school of thought of like, oh, I pity people who like get a lot of success right away because they don't know how to deal with it when they don't get success. I'm like, no, that's not true. You know, like, no, that's not true. Like, everybody deals with it. Everybody deals with it. Like, this isn't like, even people who work super consistently feel it. And even people who you're jealous of feel it all the time. Like, everyone is struggling with this feeling of failure, or not being good enough for themselves. And I think everyone at some point, whether you have to do it for a long period of time in sort of small spurts, or you have like a huge down period, or like, I just think it will come to everyone, and it will come to you again. And like, I think that's the thing, is you hope that the next time you feel it, it doesn't rock me for like quite as long. But I do think there is some, like, to me, I feel incredibly proud of, like, I felt like everything was going badly, and I felt like, and also I have a lot to be grateful for. Like there have always been people who have cast me in things and who have worked with me, and like, I'm not mentioning any of those successes. Like right now I'm sort of just talking about like my disappointment and the web series, but there were things that have always made me feel like an actor from other people who have helped me out. But still, it felt like a very public embarrassment. And at the time, I didn't know it had happened to anybody else in like my grade or anybody that I knew.
Do you think that's a good that's a realistic prayer? Like you say you hope it doesn't happen to anybody you know, but in a way, sometimes I feel like it's okay for things like that to happen, because sometimes, I don't know, I might be wrong, but it's okay if it happens to them because they learn. Because I feel like I learned, and I'm sure you learned a lot from that happening. I'm not saying you learned not to do what you did. I'm not saying you learned not to,
definitely not.
You just learn to have that kind of feeling and know what to do with it, and it propelled you to create something amazing. And I think that is like, because you know what I mean, like it could happen again. I am like, I'm currently with an agent, you know, like I could get dropped, you know what I mean, like it's, and this time, and if it happens again, you've learned, you're like,
exactly. Like it's not that it makes you bulletproof, and like I could absolutely see going on a million more auditions and still not getting callbacks. Like, it's like just not out of the realm of possibility. But I think the thing that I take a lot of hope from is like, wow, when I felt the worst, and I was like, God, I'm a fraud. Like everybody thought I was so good at Carnegie Mellon, and like I've really disappointed everybody. Like I'm like doing nothing. But feeling like when I felt like at my worst, I can see that I created something and I didn't let it stop me. It's just something that I think you can kind of like relax about and feel really proud of, because I kept thinking, I was like, God, I'm like a real wimp if I like quit at 23. I'm like, I threw it. Because it's been a little while now. But like, if I like threw in the towel, then like it's just like so.
You still have at least a decade plus 5 years to be casted as Spider-Man's girlfriend.
Exactly. Like I don't know. I think there's like, like you've got to, I think being an actor, like you do sort of like you pray, you can look at your career with some amount of pragmatism. And like if you are still slugging around for like, and nothing seems to be changing, like maybe then you should reconsider. But at the same point, I think a huge part of being an actor is a bit of blind faith that like everyone is wrong and I am right and I am this thing.
Hubris. Nice. Now let's do this part, I call it turn up or mute. If you like something, you say turn up, you turn it up. I might ask you why you like it. If you don't like it, you mute it.
Okay.
Mute. All right. Scandal, the show.
Mute.
Do you know the show?
I honestly, I don't watch much TV at all.
But do you know about it?
Oh yeah, of course I know.
Okay.
I am a member of society. Yeah. And I think Ben watches it actually.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've heard positive things.
Okay. Pilot season.
Oh, mute. Like, get rid of it. Get rid of the.
Why?
I'm like, get rid of the freaking infrastructure. Like, it's all going away.
Yeah.
Like Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime are ruling the systems. Yeah. And I think I'm like, great. Also, just because I'm like, oh my God, everybody who's like, I don't know, pilot season. It's been a really great pilot season. And like, oh, how was your pilot season? I'm like, you can be killed. So like, let's just like have a season of free hunting for jobs whenever we want to, and also it'll give everyone like not the excuse to be like, oh, well, it's pilot season, so I can't do anything else because it's pilot season. It's like, shut up. And as far as I can tell, pilot season keeps getting longer and longer. Like people are like, oh, it goes from January to maybe May. I'm like, that's the longest season I've never heard of.
Cable TVs, they don't do it, right? The cable stations, like HBO doesn't have.
I think it's just sort of like casting du jour. I mean, certainly I'm no expert, but I'm just like, this is obsolete. Like, what is this season that, and I don't know. I'm like down with it, but I'm up for any form of anything that will like throw over any amount of middlemen in the world. And I don't know that pilot season is about middlemen, but I just like, I'm like, no, like get it away. Let's have spring.
Yeah. Nice. How about Taylor Swift?
Oh, turn up.
Turn up. Okay.
I love
You
Taylor.
Taylor Swift?
Yeah.
People think she pretends a lot, like she's always acting surprised.
She probably is acting, but like turn her up.
How about glazed donuts?
Oh, turn up.
Turn up.
Turn up.
You like donuts?
Oh yeah, I like
Okay.
donuts.
Okay.
I'm a hearty American girl. I like food.
Sliders. You know sliders?
Are you talking about the mini burgers?
Yeah.
Yeah, turn up.
See, I don't care for them.
You don't care for burgers?
No.
Is it
for
because of
sliders.
their miniature nature?
Yeah, I feel like there's something wrong with sliders. The breads are always larger, way larger. The proportion of the bread is just way larger than the proportion of the
You know,
meat. As
I
opposed
would
to
agree
regular
with
burger.
you. I would agree with you there. I would just say that it doesn't bother me.
Okay.
But I would agree with you that you are not off base in
Yeah.
saying that.
Because I was just saying, yeah. I've asked other people and they said the same thing I said. They're like, it doesn't feel like burger. I'm like, yeah, because the bread is just too large for the meat.
Yeah.
Anyway, just wanted to
No,
get that out
I
there.
got you. But I feel like, to me, I feel like people have the same problems with a lot of mini things, but like a Totino's pizza roll is not pizza. And I feel like a slider cannot be compared to like a
like
steak burger.
Yeah.
It's just like so not the same thing.
How about Donald Trump?
Oh, mute.
What are you gonna do if he wins?
You know, I don't know. I question that a lot because quite frankly, I don't see myself leaving America. Like I'm like, where the hell would I go? But at the same point, and I do like, there's a side of me that I'm sort of like, I don't feel any sort of like rampant, any sort of rampant like, oh, you've got to live with the country you're born with. I don't believe that at all. Mm-hmm. But at the same point, I'm sort of like, I'm not sure that a change in leadership you don't want at all is enough to drive you.
No.
Then like, are you interested in citizenry at all? And if the answer is no, then like, you can. I guess I just don't feel like I know what I would do, but I'm really hoping it doesn't happen. And I would encourage everyone listening to this.
If it does, okay, so what you're gonna say?
Oh, I would encourage everyone listening to this podcast to go out and vote.
Definitely, yeah. And if he wins, he won. It's a democratic process, right?
Yeah,
so
I guess the thing
deal with it, I mean,
the thing that's scary, is it's just that to me, it's not even so much that he is so scary, right? Because there are a lot of checks and balances in government. I do think he's scary. I would not. He definitely is scary.
Yeah,
but it's more. I feel some fear for sort of like those who are giving him power, because I think it is like like I don't think he's saying a lot of things based on his total true opinion. I think it's because he believes it's what the consumer base wants to hear. Definitely. And he doesn't have, and he's pandering to his consumer base. But I still think that's really scary.
That's scary.
I think that's the thing that scares me the most.
Yes, you are totally right. Anyway, this is fun. This has been fun. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, later.
Bye.
Bye. Easy, busy, busy, 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 easy, busy, busy. Easy, busy, busy.